Hey everyone, and welcome to Captain Time's Time Tips. I'm Garland Coulson, Captain Time, and today we're doing a productivity interview with Rhonda Bowen of Bell Solutions. Welcome, Rhonda.
So nice to be with you, Garland, or Captain Time. Which do you prefer? Yeah.
Garland is fine.
Okay.
So thank you so much for agreeing to be on our productivity interviews. Can you start off by just sharing with the audience a little bit about what you do?
Okay. Yes. My name's Rhonda Bowen. As you can probably hear from my accent, I hail from Pennsylvania originally, but that was a very long time ago. In 1983, I moved to Germany permanently and have had my own business here since 1988. The name of my business is Bells. And we specialize today, after all of those years and many things that we've gone through, we specialize in what we call best professionals, people from business, engineering, science, and technology, all the things I'm not. And we help them make sure that they communicate better across cultures. Notice across cultures, not intercultural, not cross-cultural, because we believe that there are two kinds of cultures. There's the geographical culture, like I was born in America and have an American passport, but now I live in Germany. So that's geographical, that's easy. But the other cultural thing that often makes a bigger difference is organizational culture. So why can't finance people talk to engineers? They could come from the same country, they could speak the same language, everything could be the same, but that doesn't work. And although I've worked with people from more than 70 countries all over the world in person, I often find that if you have two engineers from two different companies and they can sit and make little drawings, they do get along much better than two people who are from the same country and maybe grew up in the same town, but because one's scientific and one is financial, they just don't get a way to speak to each other at all. So that's why we talk about two different kinds of cultures, organizational and geographical.
Fun. So,
Mhm.
so as your business has grown, how has your relationship with time evolved?
Well, let's put it this way. I grew up in a very interesting place as far as time was concerned. I grew up on a dairy farm, which means 7 days a week, no breaks. Something has to be done every day from 5 in the morning until 8 in the evening, every single day. There's no weekends, there's no vacations. There are those things that, but then someone else has to be coming in and taking care of the animals. So time has always been one of those things that has been, first of all, dictated by nature. When the
Right.
cows call, then we had to do things. And also dictated by nature. Is it raining outside? Is it snowing? What can you actually do? So I'm very much in alignment with what happens in nature and know that it's important to do those things at the times that are appropriate, number one, but also feeling for your own nature. I always say to people, you can't just keep pushing and pushing and pushing. At some point, you get burnout or you break something or who knows what. So it's really important to have time to have this inner feeling of time and what's really good for you for time. And I think a lot of people just are either, clicking the little card in the box because that's what they have to do, or those of us who have our own businesses have been pushing and pushing and pushing and trying to do 10 million things a day. And we need to figure out that nature takes breaks and we also sort of need to take breaks. And as I've grown my business and now I have three other people working with me, so I don't have to do everything by myself, but we're in four different time zones and therefore we always have to make sure that we coordinate things very well as far as timing is concerned.
So if your schedule gets totally derailed one day, what's your strategy for getting back on track?
One of those things is, what can I farm out to my husband?
I love
No,
it.
we live and work in the house, and he
Right.
has an office and I have an office, and that's very nice. And if something really gets crazy, I often see either someone from my team, but they're not physically here. If it's something physical here in the house, of course it's with him. But the other thing is, when things really get derailed, is I think people forget that all of us are human and all of those things happen at times when things get messed up. And if we just reach out to somebody and say, I would love to have a good appointment with you today, but something has happened and it's not going to work. Can we reschedule for 2 days from now? Most people will gladly say yes, especially
Right.
because they want quality time with you and not while you're pulling your hair out trying to figure out what you're going to do to get back on the rails.
No, Great answer. And
Mhm.
you're right. It happens to everybody, and most people are fine as long as you reach out and reschedule or
Yes.
make a change or shift some of those things. It's most people are really accommodating with that. So
Well, and they're
I
happy because when they're in that situation themselves, they know
right.
that it can be reciprocal. So, which is also very important.
I'm a bit of a tools geek. I love learning about tools and finding out what everybody's using. So, can you mention a few time-saving tools or apps that you use that you couldn't live without?
Well, since well, I started using this before I hired people, but since I now have people on my team, the thing I cannot live without is Notion.
Right.
We do so many things in Notion. We can coordinate everything in Notion, especially because we're in 4 time zones. We're except when we meet once a week, where we plan to all be in the same place at the same time. There is no way that we could keep up with everything otherwise. So our go-to thing is Notion. The other thing we use, because there are 4 of us, is OneCal, because we
Yes.
have our OneCal set up that if people need to talk to more than one person on the team, they can choose the people they need to speak to.
Right.
So, for example, if it's strategy for marketing and if it's also something about tech, my 2 gentlemen, you can go in, you can book just to talk to the 2 of them, and everything is coordinated, which means I don't have to be there and I don't have to work on anything. People can choose the times that work best. And so OneCal has been a real blessing for us to be able to keep everything in track and to give others the opportunity to book the way they want things and not have all the back and forth.
Right. And
Yeah.
so, what's an automation you've implemented that's given you
Mhm.
the biggest time return?
The way we send our emails. I think emails are the most wonderful thing in the world because, as we all know, it's the one thing we really own. We don't own anything in social media, but we do really always have the chance to interact with our email list and to make sure that we send out something every week and that people are really informed about what's going on. It is so important. We've used a number of different email providers, but I think it's important to make sure that you know that the system works and that you can interact with the system well. So when something doesn't work, number one, you can fix it. But number two, that people understand things like unsubscribing. It's important for their time. Maybe we were working on something they were interested in, they're not anymore. It's a good way to make sure that they're using their time wisely as well. And I think we all get things for a while and then maybe it's not so pertinent. Having an unsubscribe is a great way to manage your own time as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, my next question was going to be about do you do everything yourself or do you delegate? But you've already said you have a team.
Uh-huh.
So, tell me a bit about your team and how you delegate.
Well, I've worked with my CTO now for 5 years. He's in the Philippines. So we have very interesting things about doing things as far as timing is concerned. I grew up without a computer. I'm a baby boomer. And so, as much as I love being online, when I made the shift to take my entire business online in 2019, right before the pandemic, by the way, I'd had my company for over 30 years and said, I don't want to be traveling around the world anymore. I want to be able to sit at home and do these things. So, when I wanted to make that shift, I needed somebody who could really help me with the technology because, as I said, I didn't grow up with it. In the meantime, I love it and I'm probably good at it for somebody my age, but you still need somebody who has the real training and has learned how to do these things and is an official developer to be able to do the things in a way that works well. Then I have a gentleman from Kenya who helps me with all of my messaging, my digital marketing. As much as I work in communications, you can always help other people better than you can help yourself.
Yes,
So
yes.
having somebody to come in and to drop, things back and forth and to have a sounding board and to figure out what's really important. And I am not a classic social media person, so he's telling me all the things I need to know about that. And my lady in South Africa is absolutely wonderful. She's the operations geek. If I say, we need something new in Notion, she goes in and says, oh, and I say, well, you can give it to us next week. Oh, no, Rhonda, let's do it now. And she goes and does 26 clicks and the whole thing is set up and it's absolutely
That's
wonderful. So having somebody to do, the marketing side of things, which I'm not good at, the tech, which I never learned, and operations, which I understand, but it's so much better to have somebody who's very proficient. Those are the things that really save a lot of time for me.
not the best use of your time because you can do
Mhm.
the high value things only you can do then.
Exactly.
You do the
Exactly.
detail. That's brilliant. Great. So, meetings. What's your approach to meetings? How do you keep them productive and time efficient?
Well, I'm an old meetings guru from way back. I've been teaching about meetings for I don't know how many years, because I grew up in an organization in the US for children who live out in the country, which is called 4-H. And we started doing meetings and actually having, titles in the meetings, like who was the secretary, who was the chairperson, and all those things. I started doing that when I was 8 years old.
Great.
So I grew up doing meetings, which is really, really wonderful. And I had all the different roles, and I had to learn Robert's Rules of Order and all of those kinds of things at a very young age, but it was not in school. So I wasn't getting grades or marks for this. I was just learning this in a social system where everybody every year just rotated through and you got a chance to try all the different things. So I was fortunate to begin having a really good structure for meetings from the time I was very young. And fortunately or unfortunately, all the time I've lived in Germany, Germans are good at very many things, but they're not good at meetings.
Oh
And
no.
so all the meetings I've been in, not only professionally, but in organizations I belong to, I'm always the one who's coming in and bringing the structure and explaining how to do things. And the big rule for me is if you ask me to attend a meeting and you don't send me an agenda, I don't come. I need to know what's happening before, because I've been invited to so many meetings where I sit there and I say, I can't provide any good value to the meeting, and I'm not getting anything out of it that's really good for me. And of course, nowadays, when can record things, I watch all the meetings that I can't, that are at 3 in the morning for me because they're in the US, someplace on the West Coast. I watch meetings in at double speed.
Right.
So I spend a lot of time not in meetings, but still getting the input from the meeting, or now a lot of times with the AI summaries we have. I've really been able to pare down the amount of time I spend in meetings, but I run a hard ship. I'm a facilitator, and when a meeting is supposed to finish after 1 hour, it finishes after 1 hour. But as I said, I was just very fortunate to start this at a very young age, which most people were not.
Brilliant. And that's a really good point. Like there's many opportunities for young people involved in these kinds of organizations that
Mhm.
are lifelong skills that you develop
Yes.
from a very young age. And I'm sure we could have an entirely separate podcast conversation about the differences between doing business in America and doing business in Germany. I'm sure that's
Very much
also a very intriguing topic. So
Very much so. Yes.
as a successful business owner, you're probably a lot of demands on your time. So how do you strategically say no to some opportunities or commitments that really don't quite align with what you want to do without burning bridges?
Well, I think the most important thing is understanding what's aligned with ourselves. And I think with all of the wonderful things that are out in the world and all the buzzwords we hear about FOMO and shiny object syndrome and the next new trend and what are we doing, there are lots of times I love new things, and I love trying things out. I'm just a very curious person in general. But in the end, as you said, understanding the alignment means understanding who you are and what works best for you. And when I first started doing things online, I had these very young, independent kinds of people who were talking to me and saying, well, Rhonda, just put something on social media. And I said, I have a 30-year reputation. You
Right.
just don't put something on social media and people say, Rhonda, what were you smoking before you wrote that? I said, I can't be doing those things. I come with a background. And the young people who didn't, which is great for them, but of course I had to keep that in mind. So understanding what is really important for me first, and understanding what is the value I'm trying to put out, and then aligning that with when somebody asks me a question and I say, is this aligned with what I believe in, and is this going to help me do what I'm doing to make an impact in the world? And if I can't answer yes to both of those questions, then the answer is a very polite no, but hopefully with a recommendation of who else or what else could help that person. I grew up doing a lot of things with languages when I first came to Germany, and people often would come and say, well, yeah, you can help us with English, but who can help us with French? Or do you also speak French? And I was like, no, 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 no. I don't speak enough French to do anything. But I had colleagues who spoke French and Spanish and lots of other languages. And I said, no, I can't help you with that, but I can tell you somebody who maybe can. And so being able to say no, but still helping somehow for me is the magic wand to make sure that people understand that you're not just saying no to say no, and you're trying to find a good way for them to get what it is they want as well.
And how do you dedicate time to continuous learning and personal development?
Oh, that's a very important thing for me. And it's one of those things that I do every morning. I have an hourly routine that I do, and some of that is review of things I've done before, but usually once a day there's something coming into my inbox that's a podcast or an interview or something like we're doing today, where I actually sit down and watch these things because A, keeping up, but B, I think we only grow and develop in a way by taking in the things that were new to us. They don't need to necessarily be new. I watched a video from Napoleon Hill the other day, which is definitely not new, but just to be, to tune into that again, not only read the book, but this was an 18-minute video. I watched it in half the time, but it really just reminded me of things. And personal development is not only moving forward and learning all the new stuff, it's also regrounding and making sure that we know what it is that's important to us and remind ourselves of that from time to time as well.
So, for someone who's just starting their business journey, what's the first time management system they should implement?
I think that varies a lot from person to person. I am not the person who can sit down and write down every single thing that I need to be doing every single day. By human design, I'm a manifesting generator, and that's just not the way I tick. But for those people who really like to have a system, make sure that they try a few different systems and then choose the one that really fits with them. I have had for many years an online calendar. I could not live anymore when everybody says, "Oh, Rhonda, let's talk." All I do is send the link and I don't have to worry about it anymore. There are so many people who used to want to talk to me all the time and compare calendars that drove me up the wall. And I was so happy when I finally found a good online calendar,
Right.
because now that is the thing I can say no to, not to speaking to the person, but to all the logistics of getting it to work. And therefore, try some things out. See, if an online calendar is fine for you, there are other people who say, no, I want to decide when that is. Well, then you can't be using an online calendar. So see what really aligns with you and make sure you choose the things that support the way you would like to do your work.
And as a coach, I mean, I got multiple meetings every week, and an online calendar really just
Yeah.
saves me, especially for people in extended time zones, because
Yes,
I mean,
exactly.
those Aussies are in the future. It's tomorrow there, so it's very. I would go back and forth for 2 or 3 weeks sometimes trying to get a coaching session booked, and now I just send them a link and it just drops in. It's brilliant. So how well they work.
Well, and the nice thing is, having grown up in this place where the days were so long, and because I have clients in Singapore and I have clients in Alaska and everywhere in between at the moment, my calendar runs in my time zone from 7 in the morning to 9 in the evening. That doesn't mean I work nonstop from
No.
7 in the morning till 9 in the evening, but then I get the chance to have all of those things. And when I do online sessions where I'm introducing something to people, I always have the same session 3 times. So there's a session that's good for the Asia Pacific group.
Okay.
Then there's a session that's good for the European African time zones. And then there's a session that's good for the American time zone. So at my time, 10 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, 7 in the evening. And most people could have one or two of those times then that would fit. And that means I'm being fair, because many years ago I was in a group and I didn't decide when the times were. And a lady came on and she said, "Oh, Rhonda, I can't turn on my camera today." I said, "Are you all right?" She said, "Yeah, it's 11 o'clock in the evening. I don't want everybody to see me in my pajamas." And I vowed that I would never, ever offer sessions where anybody would have to come in their
Mm.
pajamas. So that's why I do things at 3 different times. And then people get a chance to choose what works best for them.
That's great for them.
Mhm.
So, what's your next step? What's your next major passion project, and how will you create time for it?
Well, it is the thing I'm doing the most for in timing for at the moment. I'm creating a global movement together with a number of other wonderful people, which is called the Midwise Alliance. It's on LinkedIn. It has a company page if you're interested in finding out more. But the important thing about that is keeping the balance between the things that I can do by myself and the conversations I need to have to make sure if we're co-creating this and it's not just my baby, because I want this to outlive, just whenever I can still be working on it, that we need to find the time to do the quiet, the inner work where you get a sort of a foundation set up and you can explain things to people. But last week I did 3 wonderful sessions about asking people to just come and listen to a 15-minute presentation and then actually just talk about it. And the balance of doing things on your own, the quiet time you need to actually be thinking things through, but to be doing things that are group projects and where co-creation for me is such an important value of what we do, making sure that those times are worked out in a way that you get the input you need and then move forward and go to the next step. So that's what I'm working on at the moment.
Great. And so you mentioned the Midwives Alliance on
Mhm.
LinkedIn as one way
Mhm.
people can connect with one of the projects you're doing.
Yeah.
How else can the audience connect with you if they want to learn more about what you do?
Well, I think what I will send you is my link tree. I don't know
Brilliant.
if everybody is familiar with Linktree, but the nice thing about Linktree is that it has my LinkedIn profile, my personal one and the Alliance, but it also has a place to book a call if you'd like to do that. And it has other projects I'm working on. For example, within the European Union, I'm working on an online platform called Catalyst, where we have 70 courses and there are 16 partners. And so when you go into the Linktree, you can actually choose and look to see which of the different things that could be interesting for you, and then just reach out to me either by email, by whatever. Just let me know, look at our websites, see what's going on, and hopefully you'll find something that will be beneficial to you and we can talk about it.
Great. And we'll drop the Linktree link in the description of this podcast so that everybody can access it. Is there any final thought you'd like to share with the audience?
I would love to reflect on what you have behind you, the clocks. This is absolutely wonderful because you have so many different clocks, and that's a wonderful collage that you have behind you, which is great. But it's interesting that clocks reflect the time, not only the time, like what time of day it is, but the way they look. There are very classic looking clocks there. There's the electronic kind of clock. There's the sort of, being in the airport or whatever kind of a clock. You have wonderful different clocks on there. And the important thing, I think, for our own clock is, how does my clock tick?
Hmm.
And if I had to draw a clock, I mean, I'm not an artist. Thank you. You have such wonderful images. That's a big help. But everybody's clock ticks slightly differently. And I think the important thing is when we're interacting with others. I mean, you and I did a calendar link thing today that works really well for both of us. For other people, that's not such a good idea. There are people who like to be surprised. There are people who like to have everything organized and they know exactly what's happening. So I think the most important thing about time is to make sure that you understand what works well for you doesn't always work well for the others, and try to put yourself in their shoes and figure out and find out from them how you can approach things so that the time you spend together is really valuable and nobody's worried or nobody's upset because of the way it's happening, because this is the kind of time as we're spending today where we really get to propose value, not only for the two of us, but for everybody in your audience. And we also make sure that we're respecting what other people's feelings about time are. So thank you so much for the wonderful picture that motivated me to say that we really need to make the distinctions in time for each individual person.
Rhonda, it's been an immense pleasure having you on our podcast today. Thank you so much for sharing your productivity wisdom with us, for your very successful business, and especially some of the insights we got a glimpse into doing business in Europe. For those of you who are listening, please hit the like and subscribe buttons, and it helps tell YouTube and all those other algorithms that this is great content that should be shared further. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Garland Coulson, Captain Time.